dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them dice. You never know if it.
Hello, and welcome to Dungeon Master of None.
I am Dungeon Master Rob.
I'm Dungeon Master Matt, and today we are joined by very special guest Olivia Hill of Machine Age Productions and newly released playtest of iHunt: Dollars and Draculas. Olivia, welcome back to the podcast.
Howdy, it's been a while.
Thanks for coming back. Longtime DM of None heads will remember that Olivia was on in episode 129, going on 5 years ago now, to talk about iHunt the first time. And Olivia, you've been up to a bunch of things ever since then.
Well, yeah. Honestly, iHunt has been a significant portion of what we have done for the last few years. And most of the things are sort of branched off of that. We have a few other sort of like truly independent projects from that. But for years, we were supporting iHunt with regular zine material, about a 20-page zine every month for about 3 years. We ended up with about 40 of those, 3 whole books full. And now we're kind of like coming back to the sort of 4th book of supplementary material. And as we were coming up with that, we also started getting into the idea of why don't we do something that's going to piss off all the right people and make happy all of the other right people, and do something with D&D with iHunt.
If listeners remember from episode 129, the game iHunt uses the Fate engine for its mechanics. And if you forget what iHunt is, it's Uber for monster hunting in the gig economy.
Listen to the episode if you're wondering. It delighted me then. It delights me now. I think that Olivia, you've done a great job. It does just such a terrific depicts the precarity of gig work and the gig economy and just existing in capitalism, and merges it with killing monsters, which honestly, a tremendous idea. Remains like a really like great concept. And a lot of the all the zines you put out have been great. There's a ton of supplemental material. We'll link the Patreon so you can go take a look. But you were putting out a zine pretty regularly for a long time, and they're all great supplements to the core idea. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was a TV show in production for a while.
Okay, so
sorry.
No. It's actually a really silly and complicated story, and I'll tell the very simple version of it.
Okay.
So the sort of the TLDR is whenever I came up with iHunt, I was in Japan with my family, and we released it. Everything was going okay, and then COVID hit, and then basically we had to leave Japan. And fortunately, iHunt was doing well enough that we were able to successfully move back to the United States. And whenever we landed, I'm from California, and I had some friends there that worked in television on some shows like Star Trek Discovery and stuff like that. And they were really, really hype about the idea of getting iHunt on TV. And so we had a few friends from Hollywood that were sitting down with us and developing a series pitch. And we did pitch. We pitched to Netflix, HBO, Showtime, Amazon, everyone. And basically the universal response was, this is really cool. We wish we could make it. But right now, COVID, and we're not approving anything. We're not greenlighting anything that isn't like established IP. Which, understandable, it sucks. But also one of the kind of things is that in Hollywood, once you've pitched something, you can't really pitch it again in that format. Like, you can do other adaptations, but the thing that we spent a lot of time and effort developing was dead in the water like that.
Right.
And since then, I have been working with a friend to finance an indie TV series. We were working on that pretty heavily, and then basically the streamer crash started happening, and money started being a little weird with TV. It was all a result of COVID and the strikes, and it's just complicated. So we realized that we probably had a better chance of financing a film. So currently I'm sitting on a script. I'm sitting on the 3rd draft of it. It's really fucking fun. We've been pitching it around. We've been talking to people. We're in the process. It's just a painstaking process. As a part of the process, a few weeks ago, we decided to get together as a crew and do a zero budget short film for a couple of contests that we can hopefully get some money from. So we filmed that, and that's going to be dropped pretty soon. It's called iHunt Loose Threads, and it is a fully featured. I guess the public version will be about 14 minutes, and it's funny. It's fun. I wish I could show everyone right now. I'm waiting to find out how we're going to get it out publicly. But it's super good. I was absolutely blown away when I was on set because we put the whole thing together in about a week, a little bit less actually. My producer was traveling out of state, only communicating by email. He put together a whole cast and crew, and then over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, we filmed the full thing, and it was way better than I ever expected. It was like better than it has any right to be. Our talent was just phenomenal. Our camera person, our actors just blew it out of the water. Everyone brought their A game, and it's one of those collaborative efforts where it's like everything clicks into place and everything feels good. It feels like, oh my God, we're doing the right thing. And now my big problem is I just can't get back on set fast enough.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's super exciting. I've been, you've been hyping this for a few weeks on socials. And so I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to when it releases. I have said before I love the iHunt vibe and aesthetic, and I'm sure that like whatever you've come up with will be funny, and I'm super excited about it. If you need to convince anyone to watch iHunt or to play iHunt, just show them one of the fake advertisements in world from the game. Like, the average American spends over $10,000 a year on healthcare. That's two vampires. iHunt app now. Yeah.
So fun fact, that was sort of the premise that's where we came up with the idea. My producer pitched me, and he was like, so I have this idea. We have a 2-day window where we can do some shooting. I have some people. Let's put something together. I have an idea. If you can write this script in 48 hours, and it's inspired by the posters that you did, the banner ads that you did for the original iHunt. And he was like, so I have an industrial printer, and I was thinking, what if we did some of those, redid those as posters in the back of an iHunt HR office, where we are interviewing iHunters for their testimonials to try to sell it to new workers and to do their like training videos and stuff like that. So the first half is in an office environment, and it's three interviews with 3 iHunters that are completely different. And in the background, you see those posters that are like, take that sick day, you earned it.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah, these are some of the best parts of iHunt. Cyberpunk RPGs, cyberpunk aesthetic has long leaned on like these very funny, tongue-in-cheek advertisements as like a way of communicating. But I really think you have perfected the form. Like I think that the tone is very precise in iHunt. So this is I was excited before. I'm excited now. I think it's a great concept.
Well, that whole advertisement angle, honestly, is because of Fiverr.
I was just gonna say, was this because of that nightmarish like Fiverr ad? What was it like?
The one that's like, you don't need to sleep.
You don't need to sleep. That's why I was like, yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Holy shit.
It's like they're advertising.
Oh my God, he admitted, yeah.
Oh my God. So I saw that, and I've been trying to emulate that, and I've been trying to hit that. But the thing is that if you try to satirize that, it feels unbelievable.
Right.
It's very hard for me to say, no, an HR department or a public relations department would have put this out. But Fiverr did. They're the kings.
Yeah.
Actually, Philomena is saying, my partner is saying that she thinks that Fiverr actually came after the first few of ours. And that's why I had to up my game.
I remember when
Breathed of heaven that into existence, perhaps.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, did you?
All the time, people are doing that. Just the other day, there was a thing. So in the world of iHunt, Hunters don't often have medical insurance, or they have medical insurance with very high premiums, deductibles, and copays, blah, 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 blah. They can't go to the doctor. Also, going to the doctor means questions. Whenever you have a bullet wound, they have to report that to the police, yada, yada, yada. In iHunt, there's a service called MedPDQ, and it's an app, and it's basically Uber, but for emergency doctors. You pull out the app, you tell it your location, you tell it your symptoms and the problems, and then very quickly, hopefully, a doctor shows up at your location and treats you, and you have to pay in cash. But oftentimes the cash rate is much less than the hospital rate because they have not been jacked up by insurance. And just the other day, Amazon announced that it's been testing a pilot program where its delivery drivers are being trained as EMTs, and they are being given defibrillators in their Amazon package vans. So they can respond. They can be first responders if people have heart attacks, heart failure in their area. They can rush to the location before EMTs could get there because they were there anyway, because it's Amazon and they're in every facet of our lives. And to me, like, there's a value to something like this. Obviously, if you have this service and there are people all over, yeah, it is nice to have them ready to respond. That is certainly a thing that communities can do for one another. But to put it on Amazon drivers is just such a cherry on such a shit sundae. Like, it's awful.
Well, this is a genuine like issue in the space, is that it's harder and harder to, well, first of all, precise issue of our healthcare situation, but on satire, right? Like the boys, the show keeps running into this issue, this legitimate criticism. Like last season or the season before, they had a joke on the show where depending on who was like on screen, like you would get advertised something different, and it was like they were in the show, it was something racist, and it was funny, but like people were like, that's ridiculous, and they were literally basing that off of an Amazon technology that they had been pitched by like the company to put in the show. But it seems ridiculous if you put it like in fiction. You're like, this is preposterous. But no, it's increasingly difficult to satirize capitalism because it, like Fiverr, like Amazon, it just keeps just doing the thing unironically. You gotta, it's like a arms race of, it's terrible.
So weird fun fact, a little bit of kismet there. You mentioned the boys. One of the lead writers from the first couple seasons of the boys, Ann Kofel Saunders, she was the first person to take interest in iHunt for TV. She was like, this is so good. And when we were pitching it, she was like, all right, imagine the boys, but with vampires.
That's a great pitch. That makes sense to me. Yeah.
She was like, that same sarcastic, irreverent edge, but imagine it's people dying from a lack of access to healthcare while they're saving us from monsters.
That's a great pitch. That's a good fit. It makes sense.
Yeah.
The pitch for the new iteration of iHunt, or a supplemental version, is that it's adapted from the 5th edition 2024 D&D rules.
Yes.
If you want to try this out, but you didn't want to learn Fate, which you should learn Fate, it's a great system. But if you want to like just use the 5th edition rules, you've released a new playtest document that has basics of the rules if you're familiar with 5e D&D, plus the bulk of the document is your first hunt, your first mission. It's got a quick start characters. I love this in that, there's a lot of parts of D&D that a role-playing game, if you're using some of the bones of it, can lean on. And the one that iHunt, at least in my opinion, Dollars and Draculas, seems to lean on is the idea that, hey, D&D players love to set up fights where they're going to win, to that kind of old school way of approaching combat. And yeah, that's what you're always encouraged to do in iHunt. And so I really like this.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So Fate, I adore Fate. I've always loved what the Evil Hat team does. They really got me into designing whenever I started reading like Spirit of the Century back in the day.
Love that game.
It's wonderful.
Love that
right?
game. I was in a Spirit of the Century campaign for a year and a half. One of my absolute favorite times. Yeah.
It's absolutely delightful with Spirit of the Century, with Dresden Files, with Atomic Robo. They did so many cool things.
Oh yeah, Atomic Robo. Sorry.
Yeah, Atomic Robo. Yeah. So they did a lot of really cool things with Fate, and the thing about Fate that oftentimes would sort of like it would have dissonance with iHunt thematically, I thought. So Fate is really good for pulp action. It's really good if you're standing on a biplane punching a robotic gorilla or whatever.
Yes.
It's really cool for that. But then I kept coming back to the fact that iHunt is horror, but Fate isn't really good for horror. But I love Fate, and it would have made it very easy to finish iHunt in the way that I wanted to and make it fun. And then it came to this realization that the thing is that iHunt is horror, but it's not horror on the winning or losing side. It is not a matter of will the heroes win against the bad guy, because the bad guy in iHunt isn't the monsters that they're beating up. It's capitalism, which is this, terrible thing that's over us all and can't really be beaten up in the way that you can beat up Dracula. And Fate is really good for beating up Dracula. It's not really good for beating up capitalism. That's a whole other discussion. So I realized that I could do an action-adventure pulpy system and still do iHunt well. And then I started thinking about it recently. My partner and I have been, we've been watching a lot of Dimension 20 and things. And we're like, the dungeon model of D&D it's fun. It's a thing. But I think a lot of people now have sort of adapted their perceptions of what D&D is into a much more sort of like controlled and designed skirmish game. And that's really good for playing those exceptions, trying to experiment, trying to improvise, using your environment, and really letting the environment and letting the setting be a character in a fight. Which is something that I don't really feel like old editions of D&D did it very well.
No.
But now it's much more established. And I think also with like Baldur's Gate 3, a lot of people have been able to conceptualize D&D as something else. Obviously, iHunt isn't going to have a whole bunch of barrels around that you can shoot and blow up.
Sure.
But the ideas are there. And as we've been playing more, my partner, for example, has been doing professional DMing. And she finds that a lot of people come from Baldur's Gate and they're immediately like much more open to the idea of playing with the environment, playing with positioning and, how that feels. And then we thought, well, the same argument that we used for using Fate in iHunt also works for D&D. Ultimately, the heroes win most of the time, but at the end of the day, they come home and there's a bigger problem that can't be stabbed.
I want to agree and say that there are like two, at least from my experience with Baldur's Gate 3, two things people are taking it with. One is the like incredible tactics, but two is people really expecting to have those campfire scenes among the party, and that you have to kind of give them prompts. I think a game like iHunt is perfect for that because you have a mission and then you come back to your lives and then you have those scenes. And so many role-playing games have that kind of action rest phases of the game mechanics, and so
we
I think,
we codified that actually. I don't know if you saw it in the adventure, but we're doing what is called a montage action.
Right. The montage action.
So in iHunt for Fate, there's a mechanic called the Edge, where basically the upper hand in the battle switches back and forth as things evolve in the fight.
Right.
The reason for this is that because in the world of iHunt, there's a saying. It's called "He had a fair fight." A fair fight in iHunt means a hunter just died. In a fair fight, hunters die. Monsters cheat. Monsters have superpowers. Fair fight, you die. In iHunt for D&D, we have what's called a montage action, which is a period of prep that leads up to the skirmish, and that prep helps you build an edge pool, which is basically it's a pool of dice that can be thrown into any roles that are related to that hunt. So once you're actually doing the skirmish, you can apply that to your rolls to figure out what the monster is weak against. You can, knock them a little harder, whatever. And it's meant to emulate that same sort of flow of play. And, iHunt draws heavily from like TV and movies. And so we really want that arc to be, you get the job, you figure out what the scope of the job is and what the necessities for it are. And then you prepare as much as you're reasonably able to within the time frame and the restrictions given to you, and then you do the job. Then we find out the blowback, the chips falling from that.
Let's talk about what's in Dollars and Draculas too, because it's not just, well, there's a lot I want to talk about. There's a lot of interesting things, but this is still a playtest document, technically, right? But it has a full adventure, it has characters, it has maps, scenarios, new rules. Like there's a lot going on here.
Yeah. So the plan for this was, it is a product. It is a thing that we want people to see and to have, and we will be printing them once we're comfortable with the final iteration of it. We will be printing it, and it will be our quick start that we can give away to people or whatever. But the end result is going to be we're going to have a full game. Once D&D has sorted out its whatever with its Creative Commons license, so we know exactly where our lines are drawn. We're going to be doing that. The goal here, though, is that we don't just want to do a D&D clone. We don't want to just do some random hack. We want to use basically every page, every piece of material that we have available to do fun, discrete design. And a lot of it is going to be the sort of implicit indie design that people would come to expect from us, but in a much more discreet way. Like, for example, in our stat blocks for monsters, at the top of every one is a pull quote. And the idea is, if you look at that and you read that, for one, it's going to remind you that this character, Sam or whatever, if you're not good with names, it's going to give you an idea of their attitude. It's going to be able to give you an idea of how they're going to approach the skirmish. You're going to know if they're a coward. You're going to know if they're ballsy. You're going to know if they're belligerent, whatever. And you're going to get that idea from that. It also will help as an improv tool for DMs who are not entirely sure how to handle 8 people on the field. It is a thing that Baldur's Gate did, but everything that we will be including, all of the characters, all of the NPCs, all of the monsters, they all have names. They're all individuals, even if they're using the same basic stat block. But making them a slightly different person is more to the tune of what we do in iHunt. And basically, the whole thing is like that. The whole where we have changed the healing rules, so they're less forgiving. We don't have a lot of healing magic and stuff like that. There is a little bit of magic in the game, but you can't just cure wounds. You can't just give someone some health and, they're better. They'll rest it off. But we did want to keep it elegant and simple, the way that 5th edition is. So basically, once you get to half health, you're bloodied, just like in 4th edition, except bloody doesn't go away. You have to sleep that off. And then once you get down to 0, you get maimed. Even if you get your health back above that, you still have maimed. It still makes things very hard for you. And that's probably going to require some time in an actual hospital or with an expert who really fucking knows what they're doing. But we just want every little bit to ooze atmosphere and theme. One of the creators of Fate, Leonard Balsera, he one time told me very early on in my game design career that I am the best at mechanizing atmosphere in the game industry. And that was like the most flattering thing I've ever heard in my entire life. I will never, ever forget Lenny saying that to me because he's one of my heroes. That's a lot of the strength of iHunt and of Machine Age stuff in general, is that we like to take little bitty bits of rules and let them speak to the world, speak to the environment. And D&D 5th edition, or especially with 2024, is way more modular. A lot of the rules, the conditions and things are so self-contained that you can just kind of pluck them out and replace them, and it's not a big deal. There aren't a lot of big ramifications, and I really love that. So it was a good fit.
It is a lot easier to hack than it ever has been.
Yeah.
One of the cool hacks that you've done that I think is great, and something that I have stapled on to just about every 5e game that I've run recently is something like this, is the edge pool. And I think this, not my main complaint, but maybe probably to the top of complaints about 5e, about just D&D as a system, is that it's very like feast or famine. It's very like you succeed or you fail, and almost every other system has some way of like putting your thumb on the scale, or like forcing success, or making a sacrifice to achieve a success. And the edge pool, like you have here, sort of like does that a little bit. It helps round out those, very black and white success fail cases. Do you want to explain how it works?
Yeah, of course. So one of the big things that they put into 5th, and it's a little bit more prominent in 2024, is inspiration, which lets you basically take advantage. It lets you reroll a die. It's really cool. But in all of the Let's Plays and stuff that I've watched a lot of Dimension 20. We listened to Not Another D&D podcast. We've seen Critical Role and stuff. Nobody ever uses it. It comes up so infrequently that
it's a known issue. People hoard it, or they forget they have it, and it's yeah.
And that was initially a problem with fate points. Whenever we saw people playing with fate points, they don't know when to use them, and so a lot of iHunt was to give them the guidance on how to make that flow. Also, in 5th edition, and especially in 2024, you have a lot more things like Bardic Inspiration, Bless, that really let you do that kind of stuff, where you can take that failure and eke out a success from it. But those rules are typically very isolated, and so it's all based on party composition. Whereas with our system, the edge system, it's tied to the montage, where basically you put in the prep work, you do some leg work, and you have this set of dice. In the playtest, I believe they're all D4s, but the idea is it's going to basically be scaled on the DC. I think it's been a while since I've looked at what our notes are, but we're going to scale it. So at like 10, it'll be a D4, 15, it'll be a D6, etc. and so far every 5. We're going to be using a lot of succeed by 5. There's a little bump rules. But so the edge pool is full of these dice, and it's going to feel a little bit like, if anyone's ever played Marvel Heroic Role-Playing, the Doom pool. But because it's iHunt and we are very human forward, we are very hunter forward, we want them to succeed, it is not a doom pool. It's just a pool full of dice that the players get to use because they did their legwork. They can bring these things up. When I was researching this guy in the library, it said that he has a very weak nose, so I'm going to blow dust in his face as I hit him. I'm adding this D6 to the damage or whatever, or I'm giving him minus D6 to his saving throw against the thing that I'm doing to distract him or whatever. So it gives you this suite of tools that can be shared around the party, that can be used to get someone out of a pinch, and ultimately to give the players a little bit more agency. Because remember, Dracula is not as scary as Eviction. You can't use your edge pool to beat Eviction, but you can sure use it to beat Dracula.
And it also, it lets the players know, okay, like here's this big pile of chits or tokens in the middle of the table. If there's 15 of these in the pool, we know we're really prepared for this job. If there's 3 of them, but we have to do it anyway, we know, okay, we don't really kind of know we're starting on the back foot. It's a nice visual as well as mechanical representation of, okay, how prepared are we going into this hunt. And one of the other things I really like about the Quick Start Adventure, and I think this builds on 100 episodes or so ago, we reviewed in our episode on heists, another Far Horizons co-op production, The Role Player's Guide to Heists, and all of the great examples of heists. And this is a perfect first heist adventure. So I think if you're trying to transition a group of players from like dungeon crawling or like 5e big adventure module games to, okay, here's an open-ended heist. This heist, well, the heist is killing a monster, but like it's really, really a good starting one because it's very straightforward. There's a couple interesting twists the players will discover, but it gives them a ton of agency on, okay, how do you want to do this job? There's probably not that many wrong answers here because it's that kind of first job. So I really love it as a first Monster Hunt heist adventure.
Yeah. The Guide to Heist. Oh gosh, I wrote so much of that. I really, really love that book. Heists are like kind of to me the heart of your average role playing game. A lot of people are like, Lord of the Rings or whatever. My sort of holy trinity for inspirations for iHunt is Leverage, Burn Notice, Psych. It's TV shows where you have people who are essentially underpowered using their teamwork, their preparation, and their individual unique skills to mount an attack against something that is otherwise insurmountable and kicking ass doing it. That to me, that's the average role-playing game, the average action-adventure role-playing game. At least when I'm playing, that's how it ends up being. So why not write something to support that? And thank you. That's absolutely like, what a good catch. that is so intended by what we do. And it's funny because it's so tied into the Guide to Heists that we did with Far Horizons a million years ago. It's absolutely core to the iHunt experience.
Actually, if I could just add, I think one mistake that many new dungeon masters make when they're like, okay, we've been playing games this other way where like I say there's a plot and we're doing this plot and then you walk over here and then I've heard about heists, I want to do them, let's transition to this open-ended, here's a goal, figure out what's going on here, then accomplish this thing. They create a really complicated, bank or thing with all of these moving parts. And I think spoilers for the adventure here, right? The adventure is there's a shitty ranch house in the suburbs with a dirtbag Dracula, a sort of an asshole lazy vampire, and he's got a nest there. And like there's a bunch of things you can find out about that, but it's simple. It's a place everyone knows, a house. And there's a million ways in, and there's a vampire in that house. Kill it. The players will provide the fuck-ups and the cool ideas and the drama to make that heist interesting. Start really simple.
Absolutely. So for those who haven't seen the adventure yet, one of the things that we did for the location was I took an old... I believe it was like a Sears model home catalog from the 50s. And I tore it apart. I rebuilt one of the houses from it. I made it so it fits a battle map. But I took their brochure and I just used it pretty much as is. I changed some of the numbers and things. But if you are like, especially if you live or have been through California, it's a very iconic type of house because after World War II, the GIs came back. And they all got these cheap ranch houses. And over the course of the past 70 years, you have all of these neighborhoods in California that were basically just little military compounds full of returned soldiers. And then they moved on as they got other houses, as they got other jobs or whatever. And so all over you have these neighborhoods of these former military houses that all basically look the same. They all came out of a catalog. They're all single family ranch homes. And so it's very evocative for someone who's been there, but I think it's simple enough for someone who hasn't. It's a simple room. It's a little 3-bedroom. It would be considered a cozy, tight 3-bedroom for your average family. Instead of doing the bank vault, we just had a bunch of points of interest and things that can get fucked up. Philomena has been doing the encounter and basically the map design, and that's like it's my favorite part because I get to see that and I'm like, oh crap, that's so fun. And then we play test them and I get to see how it works. And oftentimes my silly ideas that I will come up with, my ridiculous heists, she will already have some things in there that we can just grab onto. The big sort of inspiration from a design perspective there is the first time we read Gumshoe. Gumshoe, I believe the first Gumshoe game I read was Mutant City Blues, but the Gumshoe system is really cool because you don't really prep the mystery, even though it's a mystery-based game. You're doing these detective stories, but you find out what the clues are by how the players roll. The players will make a roll to find a clue, and if the answer is yes, they found a clue, then whatever they were looking for, that's a clue now. That's a part of it. Find a way to make it work. And I really like that sort of like you've got the sort of sandbox there, and it's up to you to figure out the continuity of that adventure from it. And it's basically based on how do the players encounter it, how do they engage with it. In my playtest, I found out that our hacker found out that the monster was sleeping in the northeast room during the day. So I drove up to the back alley and I burst out the window and just started throwing fireballs at him from inside the window. And that wasn't the initial expectation. The initial expectation was you'd probably have to go through the front or one of the sides and interact with the other servant vampires. But we dealt with them afterwards. By the time that we got to them, the main guy was pretty much torched.
Awesome.
Olivia, have you seen... I'm sorry, bear with me. Day Shift, Netflix movie?
Okay, so fun fact. We were pitching iHunt to Netflix. And then about 6 months later, after they turned us down, Day Shift came up. And we were like, oh, I see. They have Jamie Foxx, and that's why they have it, and we don't.
Yeah.
But yes, we're very familiar with Day Shift.
You're very familiar. Okay, I didn't think it was very good. I did watch it. It was fine. And when you were talking about the inspiration for the house, and I one of the things I did like about Day Shift is there's a couple of action sequences that take place in a very California type of house. Like it, like one's a shitty like McMansion. I'm like, I've been in that house a dozen times. Again, not a very good movie. Snoop Dogg's in it. Dave Franco, the other Franco. But kind of like a bad version of iHunt. But anyway, it is. I do like you like setting it in like a specific type of place, right? Like really like centering it on a familiar location. I know the type of house that you were talking about. It's I think a sense of place is very important. What I really like about Dollars and Draculas and what I really like about iHunt. I wanted to circle back on something because I really liked it. You have a bit of advice, and there's a lot of great advice in this book, by the way.
Mina gave so much good advice. Oh my fucking God.
If you want to read it, you should read it, but even if you're not planning on running it, there's a lot of really good advice for how to run the game and all sorts of things. But specifically with this is great advice. What if one player is spamming the edge pool and using up all the dice? I don't know, comrade. Don't play with shitty players. I guess you can set a limit, like each character can only take one D4 until everyone has taken one. Then they can take a second, like group dinner. Or you can say that the player doesn't use the D4 themselves, but gifts it to another player in a cool moment. Actually, I like that idea. It might end up being the default test documents. Anyway, this is good advice. This is something that we get asked a lot. Like, how do you deal with somebody doing, like, abusing some part of the system? And, this is... I liked this paragraph a lot because, truthfully, a lot of the time the answer is just don't play with shitty people, or like if they do that, tell them not to do that, or come up. I think a lot of older RPG writing like tries really hard to like make sure that there's absolutely nothing that can be abused by players, which is
my God,
a great way to drive yourself insane and then fail. And sometimes the answer is just like don't let them do that. Tell them not to do that, or just don't play with people who are going to do things like that. Anyway.
I have fallen into that trap before in my life. I have tried to design for bad faith, And
I do the
You
same
have to
thing.
design
It's-
for good faith.
Yeah, I do the same thing. It's you're afraid, right? You don't want somebody to take advantage of your system or like you know what you've designed, but you'll drive yourself nuts doing that.
So I was working a million years ago. I was working on World of Darkness with Onyx Path and White Wolf, and I was working on what amounted to the second edition of the newer World of Darkness stuff, the Chronicles of Darkness. And when I was working on the rules fundamentals, one of the things that I did is I organized a big, huge play test of the rules that I was doing with about 200 people and a whole bunch of tables of 5. And what I was doing is I organized a whole bunch of tables, and I would jump from table to table and just sort of like get the vibe, get the feel, see how things were going. And one of the things that I came up with was instead of basing experience on like the things that you afterwards, after the game is over, you sit down and you're like, who played well? You know, what did you learn? What did you accomplish? All of that stuff. Just the fucking A choice boring shit. I made it so like when you fail, if you want to turn that into a catastrophic failure, you can take it a point. When you are being coerced to do something that you don't want to do, if you decide to just do it anyway, you don't even have to make a roll, you take a point. It felt a little bit more like almost like Apocalypse World, where you're being rewarded for taking suboptimal choices. This went really well. One of the things that it did was it helped people get out of their sort of like wallflower phase. We had so much engagement at these tables. We had so many shy players who were stepping up, and they're like, well, I want my experience point. I'm going to do this shit. I'm going to go follow this rake. And it was fun because everyone was flawed. Everyone was breaking. Everyone was hitting their limits, whatever. And it was cool. Everyone was engaging. Once I put those rules into the rules document, one of the other designers was like, well, but that's going to lead to unequal experience. And what about the player who's like really bombastic and they're just going to spam these things and get all of the points, and they're just going to do disaster here and there, and it's going to destroy the game and derail it. I was like, I don't care. Don't play with that person. Right. And they ended up putting in as an alternate rule, they ended up putting in that basically the points that everyone gets go into a communal pool that gets split at the end. And it was funny. That ended up getting transferred into like the actual rules. It stopped being an optional rule and it ended up being a core rule. I've had so many people from that playtest session come back and be like, Olivia, why did you change that? Why it got me to stop being shy. It was the first time I felt really comfortable at a role-playing tables. And I was like, it was not my choice. It was not my choice. When you're designing rules, I think, at least, like I'm not the Svengali of RPGs or whatever, but I think that you should be looking at the rule and asking, is the edge case, is the exploitation case of this rule a game problem or a social contract problem? If it's a social contract problem, then you need to address that in a different way. If you just try to over-design your game to the point where it can't be broken, for one, you will not succeed.
Yeah. Good luck.
I am that kind of player. And if you try to put me in a fence, I will break out in the most glorious way. There will be explosions. It will be awful. Everyone will tell stories about it for years. But just don't do it. Don't bother with it. You know, and actually 24 D&D even it fucking acknowledges this. It's like, you know, what about the player that says that's not how physics works? It's a game. It's a game, and that way everyone is on the same play.
It only took them 50 years to acknowledge that, but yes,
right?
they finally did put it in the book. Yes,
good faith. Period. Like it's not very complicated. You will never make a rule that fixes asshole.
Yeah.
After 50 years, D&D has stopped designing for the lowest common denominator.
The worst player
person. You could even the worst person I think anyone could ever imagine is often how their games were designed. And it's
absolutely. And you could see it every time they put out errata, every time they put out an addenda or a new class. You see it and you're like, oh, some asshole ruined this for everyone.
It's also this sort of design I find it makes me weary. In that, like, if you're just a regular player or a DM reading the rules, and there's all these if, thens, and buts and caveats that they have to put into the text specifically to prevent some sort of exploitative behavior, it just makes rules unfun to read.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point, Matt. One of the problems with it is that not only does it not work, but it's really boring. It makes for an unpleasant rules document, which is a chore to get through.
And I mean, if you've read any of my games, you know that I try not to make them boring. Like they're
very fun to read.
Entertaining.
Yeah, a lot of people don't play games, and that's fine. Like they read them, and that's okay. But for those players, I want to make for sure that they have an opportunity to enjoy themselves. That way, they're not just doing homework. And for the people who are reading the rules, I like to make them interesting and memorable, because when you're at the table, it's one thing to look up like the damage rating on your weapon, but if you remember the silly bullshit that I said by that, you will probably remember the rule better, or at least you can adjudicate it better.
I agree.
I absolutely love, speaking of just reading rules, iHunt Dollars and Draculas. I'm running the quick start adventure at a bar in 2 weeks, so I'm very excited about that. So I hope it goes well. I know it will go well because no one at this game night is running anything but D&D, and so I'm like, all right, well, they've all played D&D, but what if you killed vampires in Southern California?
Vampires, yeah.
They're gonna love it. So check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes for this quick start. I have a random question that we can cut if you want, but since we were talking about getting a TV show based on a role-playing game made, and you're a veteran of White Wolf Publishing, when you were working for White Wolf, like, was there any sort of office company lore about how the 1996 Fox television show Kindred the Embraced got made?
Okay, so the entire time that I've been there, it has been 100% remote. They literally, like, the first book that I got was the first assignment I got was right when they were closing the Georgia office. And going to full remote, but we did talk a lot with the people. The thing is about the TV show, I don't think there was much room for lore in that regard, because it was very, like, hands-off. The way that TV works and the way that Hollywood works often, or especially in the 90s, was much worse then. They were just doing their own thing. There were technically approvals that had to go through with White Wolf, and they had a liaison, like a media liaison for that. But I don't believe there was ever any real issues, like any real conflict, because it was all very wham bam. The way that TV is made, it's like they're going to script the day, or they've got script and they're going to film like the next day. Sometimes they're making last minute changes, so there wasn't really any room for interaction with the studio. And I mean, gosh, anyone that's seen the show kind of knows that, like, it was tangentially involved with the property. Like, there was never going to be any real meshing because it was impossible to coordinate.
Matt is one
I'm
of,
obsessed with this show.
A dozen people who remembers this television show.
I remember it. It was wonderful. It had Kelly Rutherford in it, and
Yes.
she was in Briscoe County Junior. So
Oh yeah.
Which is the show I'm obsessed with.
That's a good show. I still haven't actually seen Kindred the Embrace. We're saving it for a Patreon episode at some point.
I'm so sorry.
I'm not.
I have seen
an okay
Olivia,
vampire
I have watched
show.
so many terrible
worse
things for this podcast. I'm sure it's not anywhere near I'm sure it's not as bad as the D&D straight to DVD sequels, which we watched.
Oh God, no! I can only imagine.
Will you tell us a little bit about? Again, you've been pretty busy in the last few months, but you put out this zine, and I'm struggling a bit to describe what it is, but Morning Again in America, and it has a terrible picture of Reagan, and it's full of great stuff. Like, it's a terrific, ripping depressing read. But what was your inspiration behind this?
Okay, so Morning in America is well, of course, the title comes from Morning in America, the Reagan campaign ad that is oftentimes considered the best campaign ad of all time. It was started our downfall as a country and as a society.
It was like the great. I mean, he fucking blew out that election. So
oh yeah,
it speaks very poorly of us, but it was maybe the greatest campaign ad ever in American history.
It is from the perspective of someone who wanted to win elections. It's phenomenal. Like even if you, as long as you don't already have an idea of how bad Reagan was, you watch it and you're like, this makes me feel good.
That's right.
And you don't really think about the between the lines stuff.
Yeah.
But so I wanted to do more zines, but so the zine collections that we have done so far, one of them was just like sort of dealing with the chaos of the world because it was right at the pandemic. And then we did ones based on like inspirations and things that we drew from for iHunt, from Hellraiser to weird internet horror. And then we did one that was all predicated on eras of the 20th century. And the way that we had done them, we would do between like 6 and 10 zines that were all sort of tied together, and then we would put them together in a book. And now we are in a situation where we've done those big things, where we have 6, 8, 10 ideas that we can do for these zines. And I realize that right now what we're kind of dealing with is such a comprehensive, weird, broad societal shit show that I wanted to do.
I've heard it called the polycrisis, which I'm coming to like as a term. Yeah,
omnicrisis even.
Yes, even better.
So iHunt is a story of sort of hyper normalization. Everything is just a little bit worse than it is for us, but not really. It's actually about the same. The thumb screws are there, but they're there to show you things. And so what I wanted to do is I just kind of wanted to like do a variety show of the shit show that is our current situation. And so we're doing things like landlords. Landlords aren't necessarily monsters, but they're oftentimes worse than monsters. You can't just make them disappear the way that you can do with a zombie. We are touching on all sorts of weird political and social topics, and it's going to be we're instead of doing it in the zine model that we've been doing, I'm going to put out some little previews on Patreon as I'm doing it. But I really want it to be a cohesive whole, despite being a very chaotic cohesive whole. And yeah, so I am drawing. I'm basically just doing a whole bunch of material that's drawing parallels between the era when I was born, when Reagan was in power, to now, and just showing all of those cyclical things. I've been listening to a lot of classic punk. I've always been a big fan of classic punk and California punk specifically. But like you listen to a Dead Kennedys record from the 70s. And you're like, this is the exact same shit that we're dealing with, like down to the word, same people. When he's saying, I am Governor Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown is still in our fucking public conscience. And Gavin Newsom is fighting very hard to take that level of asshole to a new fucking plateau. Some of the faces have changed and some of the names have changed, but it's just Reaganomics again. And I think that's dystopian. It's dystopian and terrible, but it's right for iHunt stories.
Yeah. It's dystopian and terrible, but you can sometimes it's facts like this that sometimes give me hope that our ancestors in the big struggles have faced either the exact same bullshit or even worse bullshit, and maybe they didn't win, but sometimes they won, and that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it does. I mean, I do gain some strength and inspiration from the same kind of thing. Writers from the 80s and 70s, punk bands, like, filmmakers and everything. It's like, yeah, okay, we haven't made a lot of progress, but hey, it's the same fight, and these are my people. We've always been there.
Yes, that's the big one. Oh my god.
Yeah. And it's, again, we're down bad. We've been losing, and there's no getting around that. But that's okay. Sometimes you're, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. I read something somewhere that was pointing out that like our nostalgia for the 80s has lasted like 3 times as long as the actual like 80s themselves. Like we've been stuck in 80s nostalgia for decades. And the reason for that, I think, is because we haven't actually like made a lot of like social progress. We are in Reagan's America. The world the 3 of us were born into, that's the world we're living in. Like we made some superficial progress, but it's the same thing. It's the same hypernormalization. It's the same capitalist bullshit. Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom, California is like a really good example of this. I'm sorry, it's very unfortunate. California is maybe like the worst example, but like you haven't like made any progress whatsoever.
California, I mean, there's a reason why California is iHunt. Obviously, a big part of it is I grew up there. iHunt is my relationship with California personified, and I feel like there's this perception. So California is a good place to live if you can manage it. For a lot of people, I would love to live there. I had to leave. I moved to Chicago because I couldn't afford it. I've been priced out of my home. The apartment that I grew up in when I was a teenager, that apartment was like $500. Now it's $2,500. And the minimum wage is the same minimum wage I was making at that point. It's not like it's changed. We perceive California, especially if you look at the news, socialist, communist California, and they keep doing things like vetoing healthcare bills. And as the Californian, I'm like looking at this and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, am I batshit because you guys think that this is like some socialist utopia when in fact it is capitalism working as intended. Looking back at the dead Kennedys, looking back at, your Arlo Guthrie, Woody Guthrie, you look back at all of these old speakers, these writers, and it's validating. There's nothing more fucking like wackadoo to me than whenever people are like, the politician from 4 years ago warned us about this. Hillary told us Donald Trump was bad. Well, the part that she didn't tell you is that they're very good golfing friends, and that she went out with, she invited the Trumps to her daughter's wedding. They would oftentimes spend time on the golf course. There's so many pictures of them hanging out and having fun. If they're that bad, why are they all friends? How are you going to warn me about your buddy? You can't warn me about your buddy because obviously if you thought he was that bad, you wouldn't be chilling with him. Whereas I'm listening to The Coup, the rap group from the 90s. 1993, he was the only rapper at the time whose lyrics featured explicit references to Donald Trump being a very bad person that needs to be eradicated. You look back at these people and you're like, no, I'm not crazy for thinking it's bullshit that we're being told, we're just now being warned about Donald Trump, about Ronald Reagan, about whatever the fuck the problem is today. There have always been people who have been aware and who have accurately diagnosed the problem. Something's gotta break. And they thought something had to break. And the only thing that we're doing is getting closer to the inevitable breaking point.
It's real interregnum hours. The old world is dying and the new struggles to be born. And it's been struggling for 100 years, unfortunately. But that is still the moment that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Coup and Boots Riley, like those tracks are the perfect needle drops. Will really get your players in the mood for a game of iHunt, so. If
I end up getting the TV show or the movie, if I end up landing that movie, I am going to beg Boots. I want to run the guillotine during the credits.
Yeah.
If anybody would say yes, I think he would.
I think he would. I think he'd be chill with it.
Okay, Matt, anything else that we want to cover?
Other than if there's anything else, Olivia, that you want to plug, that Machine Age Dream Productions is doing, we'll put links in the show notes to iHunt, Dollars and Draculas, and the Machine Age Patreon if you are interested in checking those out. I believe Dollars and Draculas, the playtest is pay what you want. Suggested price $10, so check that out.
Honestly, the thing is, okay, for one, next adventure soon. Philomena is currently working on it, and it's a follow-up, and it's like it's a boss fight basically for that adventure as a follow-up, and it's so fucking fun. I just play tested it last night, so everyone has to. The thing is that I think that I would really like people to read it. I really want people to download it. Obviously, numbers are a thing and whatever, but I really want people to read it because I think we're doing something that is so adjacent to the D&D design space, but with a more modern acknowledgement of the game, the way that games flow. We're using a lot of little bits of advice, a little bit of flavor text here and there to really deliver on something that we've wanted to see in gaming for a very long time, and that we just haven't really found the right comfort zone for.
I would say you're taking something like Dimension 20, the way people are playing the game now, or the way people want to be playing the game now, like they're watching that game, and designing from that starting point, which is super smart and cool. That's
literally it. Like we have looked at the way that they do these set pieces in Dimension 20, and we actually pulled a lot of influence from it. Specifically in the Starstruck Odyssey campaign, there are a lot of really fun roles for the players where you're basically getting to do some like battle master stuff off stage. You can call in help. You can do all of this work. We absolutely love our Dimension 20. We recently went to Madison Square Garden to see them. It was a really fucking wild trip.
Hell yeah!
It was a big deal when they performed there.
It was really cool. A friend of mine just had extra tickets, and he was like, "Oh, you want to come?" So I'm like, "Yeah." And so we did. It was a blast. There was pyrotechnics. There was all kinds of shit. It was really fucking wonderful. But we love that approach where, obviously, if you want to do your dungeon or whatever, that's fine. But we really like the sort of giving breathing room to the skirmish. You have a lot of room for role-playing and character growth while you're doing this shit, because you're giving it that space to play. We want every GM, every DM, every director, as we call them, to feel like a little bit like Brennan or a little bit like Murph, or whomever runs these games. They have a lot of tools and a lot of tricks that aren't inherently a part of Dungeons and Dragons, and in fact, in a lot of ways, are dissonant with the way that Dungeons and Dragons is worded and taught. So we want to do for D&D what we did for Fate. So many people come to me and they're like, iHunt, I didn't like Fate. I thought I hated it, and then I read iHunt and I was like, oh shit, I get this. Yes. I get how this can be cool. And we have so many fans and so many friends who aren't into D&D. And we want to give them the opportunity to play around with those spaces and actually see what's of value in there instead of just throwing it to the side. There's a discussion that one of the members, I think it was Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine, had in an interview a while ago, where they're talking about how they're working with something big. They're working with the record labels. They're making millions of dollars. They're winning Grammys or whatever. And, does this betray their punk sensibilities? And Tom was like, well, the thing is, we went to all of the shows. Like, we used to go and watch Black Flag. We used to watch, the Descendants and whatever. And, my go-to example is Propagandhi. They're one of my favorite bands, but nobody's ever fucking heard of them. And it's really nice to be full of a room full of punks who are all on the same page. They all know the system sucks. They all know that, things are burning, that we need action, we need community, we need all of these awesome things. But you're talking to the choir there, And when Rage Against the Machine makes a record and it goes platinum and it gets played on the radio, you have people who have never been introduced to communism, never been introduced to anarchism, who for the first time they're like, shit, this isn't okay. Like, this is not okay. And it's okay to be mad about it. Like, it's okay to be pissed. And I feel like in a lot of ways, iHunt for Fate is propaganda. It's fun. Fate designers, nerds who they play their indie games. They do their weird, solo game where you're using tarot cards to talk about your half hamster wizard who is going to save the world with flowers or whatever. And that's cool. We make those games. We love those games.
Yes.
But I want a room full of people who their only exposure to what we do is through fucking Baldur's Gate. I want people to come from Baldur's Gate or from Dimension 20, and I want them to say, "Oh shit, this is the communist manifesto that Brennan keeps ranting about during Fantasy High. Whenever the little halflings come on and start talking about the values of anarchism and the way that the state is an engine of violence, this is that, but it's in a game. It's actually in the game now." I want people to have that experience. And that's why we did it.
Meet the people where they are.
Yeah, meet the people where they are. That's exactly it.
I mean, that's a great point, and I agree. Yeah.
Thanks again for coming on the show. The game is iHunt Dollars and Draculas. Check it out.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for coming, Olivia.
Thank you very much. I absolutely hope you guys get it and love it. I really hope that we can get this out. Thank you for having me again.
It was a real pleasure. Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.